Hello everyone and welcome to this little video. In this video I am going to show you how to use whoops, which is a error page, and install it for Laravel 5. So Laravel 5 was released a couple of days ago, and one of the changes is that at its core it does not use the whoops error page anymore, because as you can see here, I just threw an exception, and this is the default Symfony error page. And personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I like whoops. So I'm going to show you how to make that work for Laravel. So here is the package on GitHub, so github/filp/whoops. And let me just copy this command. So composer require, and well, my VM just hangs there. So annoying. Filp whoops, and just let that install. Okay, so with that installed, let me just go into my text editor, and it is really simple to make this work, because well, everything in Laravel is now in the app directory, or everything is pretty much that is to work is in the app directory. So in this exceptions folder, there's a handler.php file, and this handles the exception, as you might expect. So this render method will actually be called when you have to render the exception, which makes sense, I believe. And well, I want to distinguish, which is my personal preference. You don't have to do it this way, but I want to distinguish between an HTTP exception, so that means like if they go to a route that doesn't exist, and an exception that is thrown because, well, I did some kind of error with, forgetting a semicolon somewhere. So I want to check if the exception is an HTTP exception. So if if this is HTTP exception, and pass in the exception here, I want to return this render HTTP exception and pass through the exception. If not, I'm just going to comment this out because I don't need it. I'm going to create a new method. So I want to return this render with whoops, and again pass through the exception. And that is the render method updated. So let's create this render with whoops method now, which is going to be a protected function. Render with whoops, and I'm going to take an exception as a parameter here. So now there's a couple of things we need to do. We have to instantiate a new whoops run object, and then we have to push some kind of handler to that. So let's do the first thing. Let's do this first. So instantiate a new whoops object. So whoops equals new whoops run, like so, and just make sure that's in global namespace. And then I want to push the whoops pretty page handler. So if we just go here, not here, here, there's, you can see some page handlers, and I just want the pretty page handler because, well, I like it. But of course, you can choose any of these. So let's do that. So whoops push handler, and then you just pass in the handler instance. So new whoops, I believe it is in the handler namespace. Yep. Whoops handler pretty page handler, like so. And then we just have to return a new response. So I want to return new response with whoops handle exception, pass through the exception, and the status code from the exception, so get status code, and the headers which are present in the object, so get headers, like so. And now let's make sure that we import the response. So use illuminate HTTP response, and that should work. So now, if I go to this page and refresh, wait for it to load, we have our whoops error screen. And as you can see, I threw an exception in the routes file on line 25, and just to make sure, go into routes, on line 25, I threw a new exception. Awesome. So that was how to install whoops or make whoops work with Laravel 5.